Success in Edexcel GCSE English Language is all about practice. Here's your paper one with a mark scheme of my delicious model answers. Stay tuned, you're watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
In this video, I will explore Edexcel GCSE English Language Paper 1 from November 2020. You can download this paper directly from the Edexcel websites. This is very easy to do. Simply type Edexcel GCSE English Language past papers into Google, then follow the 4 steps shown on screen. Click on November 2020 and then choose Question Paper. The insert can be found towards the very end. However, I will also show you the text and questions within this video at 5-second intervals. I will split the text into 4 parts so that the font isn't too small to read. I will then show you the mark scheme and my answers after all questions and text have been shown. You will get the most out of this process if you have actually attempted to answer the questions in full yourself. So, get reading.
How did you get on? Time now to scrutinise the mark scheme and my model answers.
Here's the answer for question 1. Just young is fine, or young friend, or my dear young friends. Nothing longer, please. Time to mark. For question 2, your 2 ways must come from line 17 to 20 only and can be either quotations or your own words. Plenty to choose from here. Time for your judgment call. For question 3, the short language and structure question, you can see the guidance to examiners stressing the importance of a balance of both language and structural points. Here are some suggested points. Press pause to read these through and compare to your answer. Are any of these points more detailed and perceptive than the ones that you wrote about?
Here's my model response for question 3.
It is notable that the narrator initially does not feel unsettled by the Count as he first sticks his head out of the window. He was at first interested and somewhat amused. These adjectives indicate commonplace reactions at seeing something unexpected, which doesn't seem threatening or alarming. However, these feelings change to repulsion and terror when the Count starts to crawl down the castle walls. The first noun is particularly interesting, as it suggests that he doesn't just feel fear, but inwardly sickened by the sight of someone apparently human acting in a way which suggests a closer kinship to some kind of winged creature. He feels disbelief at this sight, something emphasized by the simple, short sentence for effects. At first, I could not believe my eyes. After realizing that it was no delusion, the final sentence of the extract is fragmented and dotted by hyphens and an ellipsis to show his feelings of distress and disorientation. I'm in fear, in awful fear, and there is no escape for me. I am encompassed about with terrors that I dare not think of. The hyphens show his stuttering terror, something confirmed by the repetition of the noun fear. Meanwhile, the phrasal verb encompassed about suggests that the narrator feels buffeted and hemmed in by the range of different terrors racing around in his mind. Finally, the ellipsis at the end of the sentence highlights the continuous, ongoing nature of his feelings of terror. There is no imminent prospect of them ceasing. Structurally, in the final paragraph, the narrator asks, "What manner of man is this, or what manner of creature is it in the semblance of man?" This rhetorical question and the rephrased repetition of "what manner of" highlights his incredulity at the essence of the creature he saw crawling down the castle walls. He feels terrified and dumbfounded by what he saw because it transcends usual, reassuring human boundaries. Shall we briefly probe this response? Well, note how specific I am in my very first sentence. I immediately answer the question about the narrator's feelings and make the point that actually, initially, he does not feel unsettled by the Count's head poking out of the window. Next up, of course, is the carefully chosen quotation, seamlessly embedded within the sentence and not unnecessarily long. It's always a good idea to signpost explicitly to the examiner that, yes, I am goddamn exploring structure. Look, I've begun a paragraph with structurally, comma. However, you must explore the effect of structure, which I do when pointing out that the rhetorical question highlights his incredulity at the essence of the creature he saw crawling down the castle walls. Time now to make a judgment call on your response, which you will be better equipped to do having read through my response and looked at the suggested points in the mark scheme. To get into the top band, you need to have detailed insight into both language and structure. Give yourself a mark out of 6 now. Question 4 is a bit trickier. Remember that evaluating is about weighing up, probing, partly agreeing, partly disagreeing. Use quotations to back up your points, but there's no need to analyse meaning and effects. Have a read through some of the ideas within the indicative content section of the mark scheme.
Answer on question 4.
This Gothic text aims to create an atmosphere of suspense, partly due to the strangely explicit warnings issued by the Count, the unsettling setting of the castle, and the presence of the supernatural. Suspense is first built up by the melodramatic warning issued by the Count at the very beginning of the passage. He alerts the narrator, "Be warned not to sleep in other parts of the castle. But if you be not careful in this respect," the incomplete sentence and the urgency of the imperative "be" leaves unanswered questions for the narrator and the reader about what kind of dangers may be lurking within the castle, and thus effectively builds up suspense, partly because these are not specified. We know that the castle is old and has many memories. The lack of elaboration about the nature of these memories, which are presumably bad, like the dreams for those who sleep wisely, creates an unsettling atmosphere, which builds up tension. However, it is not just the language used by the Count which helps build up suspense, but the descriptions of his body language. The narrator reveals that he finished his speech in a gruesome way, for he motioned with his hands as if he were washing them. This may suggest that the Count is figuratively and ostentatiously washing his hands of the narrator if he chooses to disobey his instructions, which builds up suspense, as it seems overly theatrical and gleeful. The reader may already be beginning to think that the narrator's life may be in danger, something partly confirmed, perhaps, by the use of the adjective gruesome. Suspense builds up steadily throughout the passage, notably when the narrator is left alone and references his fragile mental state. He starts at his own shadow and is full of all sorts of horrible imaginings. The former confirms just how jumpy the narrator has become. He clearly feels that he may be in some kind of danger in the dark castle, hence his fear at the possibility of anyone coming near him. Meanwhile, the latter highlights his lack of control and how his mind has become preoccupied by scenarios which presumably see his life being put at risk. The reader can identify to some extent with these nighttime fears when alone in a strange place, and so suspense continues to build with some success. However, arguably the text becomes less suspenseful and effective when the Count is described as emerging from a window before crawling down the castle wall over that dreadful abyss, with his cloak spreading out around him like great wings. Such a description is intended to build up a feeling of horror, as it suggests the Count may have disturbing animalistic qualities which could enable him to commit acts of evil beyond a normal human being. However, some readers may view the idea of vertical wall crawling as overly melodramatic, unrealistic, and less convincing, with its move into the explicitly supernatural. That said, the final paragraph unquestionably does build up some suspense. Firstly, with the rhetorical question, what manner of man is this, or what manner of creature is it in the semblance of man? The narrator is now horrified at his realization that the Count is not a human being, but may be using an apparently human appearance to mask non-human malignity. This certainly aims to build up suspense, in that it is clear that the narrator's life may be at risk. However, this suspense is difficult to relate to. Very few of us have spent nights in a castle, and none of us have seen a human-looking creature crawl down a wall. Therefore, to my mind, whereas the references to nocturnal fears and unspecified warnings do effectively build up suspense, these are spoilt slightly by some melodramatic Gothic silliness. Let's briefly probe this response. Well, an introduction is helpful, as you can quickly show the examiner that you have understood the key events of the text in relation to the statements. Note the topic sentence in the first sentence, immediately making a specific point in relation to the statements. Look at the slightly more sophisticated embedding of quotations in the second sentence. I have the first one, be warned, within dashes, and the second post-colon. More difficult to do, yes, but it shows the examiner that I'm in control both of my sentence structures and my evaluation. Notice the use of subject terminology in the third sentence. This is not actually needed, and it's so important not to get confused between the requirements of question 3 and question 4. For question 3, you must probe the meaning and effect of language and structure, whereas for question 4, we're looking for the quality of your evaluation. Sometimes using subject terminology can mean that your evaluation is even more precise and insightful, as it is here when I point out that the incomplete sentence and the urgency of the imperative be leave unanswered questions for the narrator and the reader about what kind of dangers may be lurking within the castle, and thus effectively builds up suspense. Remember, evaluation is not just about blindly agreeing with the statements, and you can see here that I take exception to the melodrama of the Count crawling down the vertical walls of the castle. Hopefully you are now in a position to give yourselves a mark out of 15 for evaluation, focus on question, and use of supporting quotations. Press pause to ponder and do this. Now for section B. The key for either question, and I'm going to plump for question 5, is to write beautifully accurately and to make sure that you structure for effects, that you build up to something. I also always say to my pupils, how can you expect to write a beautiful piece of fiction if you Never read any fiction. The mark scheme is split into two sections. 24 marks is for tone, sounding right, and a carefully planned, ideally clever structure. 16 marks is essentially for spag, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. You are looking to use a wide variety of sentence structures for effect, and a wide range of accurate punctuation, including, of course, the much maligned semicolon.
Here's my model answer for question 5.
The excitement was coursing through my bulging veins. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Following a wretched time at work, caused by smug, ignorant, incompetent managers, a fog of panic attack misery was beginning to clear, and my heart looked like it might be ready to sing again. For, after a great deal of hassle, an extraordinary amount of planning, and a preposterous quantity of money exchanging hands, my wife and I would finally get the chance to participate in one of the world's most desirable tourist experiences, an exclusive tour of Real Madrid's Bernabeu Stadium. A la Madrid! The morning started so well. According to the notoriously reliable Google Maps, our boutique hotel was a mere 20 minutes walk from the stadium. Hooray! En route, we found a surprisingly affordable cafe where we tucked into cappuccinos with an extra shot of espresso, miniature chocolate croissants, and a decadent tarta de Santiago, a rich almond cake perfect for anyone who may be suffering the after effects of Mexican cocktails from the previous night. The winter sun was shining, the sky was blue. A la Madrid! The stadium itself soared up majestically amongst a surprisingly built-up landscape of traditional Spanish restaurants, international hotels, and glass skyscrapers. At ground level, 2 coaches pulled into a parking area and discharged tens of excited, chatting Japanese tourists, many sporting white and black scarves. Close to the entrance there was even a Bellingham bear with lovable furry legs and oh so cute glassy eyes. Fancy a picture? No problem. Just tap the card machine with €10 and snap away. We had previously been warned that the stadium tour would be slightly different due to long-term building works aimed at ensuring the best club in the world has the best stadium in the world. However, after walking up a number of flights of metallic stairs, excitement rose as we were ushered firmly towards the viewing area, a small cordoned-off part of the stadium overlooking the pitch. Except it wasn't there. Rather than an ocean of glimmering green bays, we are presented with a concrete building site. Rather than goalposts, a digger. Rather than evocative memories of past glories, the distant sound of drilling and machinery. A la Madrid! I tried to cry as I stood there, having finally arrived at the home of greats such as Zidane, Figo and Beckham. However, with so many others behind me, there wasn't time, and so I was propelled out of the viewing area in order to take my place in the queue to be photographed with the Champions League trophy. It must have been the real one, mustn't it? There was no compulsion to buy, but if I wanted a keyring capturing this memorable moment, it would be mine for just €25. Even more fortuitously, there was an opportunity to have a photograph with your favourite player. You could choose from heroes such as Roberto Carlos, Raul, and the Brazilian Ronaldo. The wonders of modern technology, the genius of marketing legends, and a snip at just €20. After being ushered round a museum full of large photographs and endless trophies, the tour ended, most conveniently I might add, in the stadium shop. I couldn't resist purchasing a genuine Real Madrid shirt for €175. Official product, the label inside pronounces proudly. A la Madrid. Opening paragraphs are particularly important, of course, and you need to show off immediately how well you can write. A few things to pick out. Precise and subtle vocabulary in the use of the verb coursing, meaning of course. Flowing quickly or in large amounts. Note the use of onomatopoeia to mimic the sounds of an excited heartbeat, separated by a slightly longer pause with the semicolons. Try to vary your use of punctuation as much as possible, especially in this opening paragraph, to show the examiner that you can do it. What about this use of imagery as I reference a fog of panic attack misery beginning belatedly to clear? This is clearly more sophisticated than just blurting out, "I've been feeling bloody miserable." I do think it is a good idea to litter your creative writing with literary devices such as a simile, personification, metaphor, and note here the use of tricolon, which allows me to build up to the revelation about my exciting tourist trip to the Bernabeu. I'm a big fan of having at least one short paragraph for effects. I actually repeat the same one 3 times, but omit the exclamation mark for the final one to indicate how my enthusiasm has been dimmed by the exposure to the relentless commercialism within the stadium tour and shop. Remember also the importance of referencing plenty of details. Now compare to your response and scrutinize this mark scheme in more detail. Give yourself a mark out of 24 and a second mark out of 16. The second part of the mark scheme will appear in 5 seconds time.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, taking you through the Edexcel GCSE English Language Paper 1 and showing my model answers. I hope it's been useful. Many thanks for watching.